TV umpire to director, we have a review. Can you rock and roll it for me, please?
Welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll It. Our colleagues at Cricinfo have been asking me for more elaborate introductions for the guests, so here goes. We've got all the way from Goa, uh, the original creator of Justin Green, legendary cricketer who could do everything. Cricinfo OG readers will know what I'm talking about. Lover of Chris Martin's batting, the WWE greater than Broken Bat Jin and his dogs Flojo and Beyonce, in that order, Sid Monga. Applause is allowed after these introductions, by the way.
There you go.
All the way from Bangalore, we've got serial protester, lover of Kuldeep Yadav, and someone who I realize I need to get to know better to do these introductions more effectively, Karthik Krishnaswamy. And all
Serial protesters are great. Serial protesters are great. Great. I'm very jealous of that description.
And all the way from Colombo, Sri Lanka, we've got award-winning writer and journalist, author of Upon a Sleepless Isle, and every Cricinfo editor's favorite meter of deadlines, Andrew Fidel Fernando. As you might have guessed by Fidel being on this podcast today, we're going to be previewing the Sri Lanka-India tests that are starting August 15th. Sid, I'll start with you. The last two India-Sri Lanka series have been pretty one-sided. Last time India traveled there, it was a one-sided series. Then, of course, the most recent series in India was again one-sided. Why do you think, or will this series be different, at least on paper? Is it shaping up differently, Sid?
Yeah, so the last two I wouldn't say were one-sided. The last one was, yes, when Ashwin was at his best and Sri Lanka were whitewashed at home. But before the series before that was a very, very challenging series for India. India were just starting out. India's this crop had just started out, and they got off with a loss in Gaul even after getting that first innings lead. Where you'll remember that Dinesh Chandimal innings, which turned it around, and the target did not seem like a lot, but that's what happens in Sri Lanka when in the fourth innings all bets are off. And Rangana Herath bowled beautifully in the test, and it was quite remarkable that they did come back from there. And the third test was not exactly a typical Sri Lanka. Seemed a lot, and Ishan Sharma and Damika Prasad, I think, had a great test. Coming to this series, yeah, I'm like this. This promises to be more like that series where India had to struggle to win that series. Again, it's a similar team in transition. India's bowlers, there's no Bumrah. Among the spinners, Jadeja is the only experienced spinner. Uh, Even Jadeja has not had a great time in Sri Lanka. So and the batting is also, yeah, batting looks better. But Sri Lanka, both the batters and bowlers will need to quickly adjust to the conditions in Sri Lanka, and I it promises to be a challenging series and a close contest. I mean, if I was making a prediction, I would say 1-1 with India kind of. I'm just making an elaborate prediction saying India will take their time to adjust to the conditions and lose in goal and then kind of come back and level it uh, in Colombo.
Yeah, Fidel, how has Sri Lanka been looking? They've won their most recent home series against Bangladesh. And they also did beat New Zealand in 2024, just before New Zealand actually lost in India. But apart from that, they've been a little bit up and down at home, right?
I mean, they've been up and down everywhere for quite a few years now. The thing that we should keep in mind is that Sri Lanka played two tests in the last 12 months. That was in the West Indies, and that was, they lost the first one quite badly. They were doing well in the second one, but that ended up being a draw. So they haven't won it. They haven't won since that Bangladesh series a year ago. What I guess the big worry for Sri Lanka is it's just been so long since they played a test at home. do they have the attack basically to win, to take 20 Indian wickets? That's probably the top thing that that's bothering Sri Lanka's coaching staff at the moment. They've got Prabath Jayasuriya, who, while a promising, decent spinner, hasn't quite, like we talk about that 2015 series where Rangan Herath was at the top of his powers, and still Sri Lanka, that series relied right into the final session of that series. But still, India kind of got across the line there. Sri Lanka's attack is what will, I think, worry the management team, especially given the kind of batting that they're up against with India. We saw a little bit of that in that practice match over the last few days. That's what gives me pause. I think probably the teams are more even than they were in 2017, when India won 3-0. But it's not. I still think that India have a significant edge here. Because Sri Lanka, I mean, you can't, world cricket, the way that the test schedule is so lopsided towards the big three nations now, you can't really realistically expect teams like Sri Lanka to consistently put out top quality teams that will challenge teams like India, if you're going to settle on a schedule that stops them from playing test cricket for 12 months. They just got back in with West Indies. They're just like finding their way back into the groove of long form cricket again. For that reason alone, I think India are much better prepared than a Sri Lanka team is. They've just been in touch with test cricket a lot more closely.
KK,
Yeah.
India, of course, one of the reasons why there are doubts about India is that they've lost their last two big home series. They won against West Indies in between, but they lost 3-0 to New Zealand, 2-0 to South Africa. What are some of the themes from those series that you could see carrying into this? Obviously, Sri Lanka won't have a Marco Jansen type bowler, but what are some of the struggles India have had in those series that they could have here?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's Fidel mentioned Prabath Jayasuriya, and I feel like if, again, like with that major challenge of barely having played Test cricket in the recent past, if he can really get into the series quickly and get into a rhythm, uh, I can see if tosses go Sri Lanka's way, for example, which was a theme both in the New Zealand series and the first test against South Africa as well, right? Where the toss certainly played an influential role on some, pretty bowler-friendly pitches. So I think if all of those kinds of things come together, I think Sri Lanka have a real chance. One of the opportunities they have, especially I think, is with the fast bowling. I think India are going there without Bumrah, and they have Siraj. They don't have Akashdeep either, who's a very good subcontinent type bowler. And so it's probably going to be Siraj and Prasidh Krishna with the new ball, and then three spinners, I would guess. I don't know if they have particularly the best pace attack for Sri Lankan conditions, and seam does come into play. The new ball does come into play quite a lot in Sri Lanka. Not so much in Gaul, but in other venues, but even in Gaul sometimes. I think that's one of the areas where Sri Lanka have a real chance. If Asita Fernando, and I'm guessing, will Milan Ratnayake be the one of the other seamers?
Yeah, I'm guessing Milan will play, and they'll probably choosing between Vishwa and Lahir Kumara.
Yeah.
Lahir Kumara is a big liability if he gets injured again. I mean, he played in the tour match against India. But yeah, they're probably I would say Asita Fernandez nailed on. Milan Ratnayake almost certain to play. And then whether, do they have another seam or do they go with more spin? I think they'll want to pack their team with a lot of all-rounders, is a sense that I'm getting from that camp. I do think that the Sri Lankan attack, because they don't have the red ball overs in their legs for a while, and they haven't come up against batters of India's quality for a long time. Like West Indies did very well in their home conditions with the Duke's ball, but playing at home, trying to bowl out a team of India's quality, they're going to need, I think you're 100% right, like Prabath Jayasuriya is going to define to a huge extent how well Sri Lanka does. If he can settle, if he gets hit out of the attack, or I suspect some of India's batters will go after him. If he comes through those early brushes fairly unscathed, and then imposes himself in the back of a Galle Test match, in the back of an SSC Test match, I expect that both those pitches will break up and spin from day 3 onwards. That's going to be a huge factor in how well Sri Lanka does. If Sri Lanka let India pile on like the kinds of like 500s, 400s, which they allowed West Indies to do in the West Indies, by the way, if that happens, then it's going to be very hard for Sri Lanka to come back into it. And the number one person who can stop that from happening probably is Jayasuriya. Asitha Fernando, in a home test series, you're not really looking for your seamers to produce the bulk of the wickets on Sri Lankan decks. There is something with the new ball for the seamers at both venues. Like first day of a Galle Test, you expect seamers to take wickets. And then reverse swing becomes a big thing. Asitha Fernando again becomes like a challenge with the older ball, particularly in Galle where the dry square and with the wind blowing across from the ocean. But the person holding it all together is Prabath Jayasuriya. If he can hold an attack together, bowl those tight spells when Sri Lanka need a tight spell from him, and then come into his own in the second innings and be like the prime attacking option, it's going to be a big test for him. It's kind of personally for him also kind of a make or break series for him. If he can really impose himself on this series, then he sets himself up to be Sri Lanka's lead spinner in this format for years to come. If he has a really bad series, then Sri Lanka might start looking elsewhere for someone to become their top spinner. So I think a lot of focus fairly will go on him. And then, the Sri Lanka's batting has also been a little bit fragile, to say the least. But I think letting India get to those 450s, 500s, that's what's going to kill Sri Lanka in this series. They let them do that.
Yeah, so I think, broad point for me is those two guys, Prabath Jayasuriya and Asitha Fernando, as you said. I think they're going to be key. And so I have worries over India's seam attack and possibly batting fourth, chasing a middling kind of target somewhere. In Galle, say chasing 150 can be really hard, right? So those are areas of opportunities for Sri Lanka, and if they can plan smartly and pick the right people, I think they have a good chance of making this a very competitive series.
I think the big difference is that the Sri Lankan spinners know how to bowl in those conditions. It's just the experience of having operated in those conditions, which is a big difference. If India's spinners can quickly find the right pace to bowl, the right areas to bowl, I think then and only then does the series start to look one-sided. If India take their own sweet time to find that right pace to bowl in Sri Lanka, which is significantly lower than in India that they're used to, that can be a problem for them. If Sri Lanka, as you said, the toss is always important in Test cricket. If India are on the wrong side of the first toss and they are chasing 200 in that final innings, I don't think it's an easy score to chase against any Sri Lankan spinner who has the experience of bowling in those conditions.
Yeah, the point of spinners finding the right pace and the right lengths has been a big theme, right, Mongo, of the last couple of India series. What did India spinners get wrong? Because they got outbowled by South Africa spinners, arguably in India. And against New Zealand, the pitches were kind of turning square, but again, arguably got outbowled by Ajaz Patel and Mitch Santner. What did India's spinners get wrong in that series, and what do they need to adapt to quickly this time?
Some of it was toss against New Zealand. Then also against South Africa, we need to remember that India played that spin test without Gill. India were like 10 men against 11. So those were the two things, but not taking anything away from Simon Harmer or Mitch Santner or Ijaz or even Glenn Phillips, who chipped in with breakthroughs. It was just India. slightly aging spin unit, slightly unlucky, slightly all those things just got together and uh, caused this trouble for India in that series. I've actually, forgotten a lot of the New Zealand series because India were outspun by New Zealand for sure. Yeah. Against South Africa, that second test was mostly Marco Jansen doing something that only he could have done in those conditions. But yeah, India were outspun in that New Zealand series where they were probably over pitching and under pitching more often than New Zealand spinners. Um, but the thing is now going to Sri Lanka, Jadeja averages 28 in Sri Lanka, which is much lower than his average in India, which kind of suggests that he will take his time to, or probably there has been observations that he's been trying to bowl slow in the tour game, so probably he's onto something there. But him and two new spinners, it will be no. It is actually Kuldeep Yadav is there, and sorry, sorry, KK. No, so I mean, there's more pedigree on paper in India's spin attack, but they just need to be able to prepare well for those conditions and be a little more overspin bowlers than side spin, which Jadeja tends to be. Uh, Sri Lanka is where overspin works more because I think the pitches have decent bounce and they have help for spin anyway. So you don't need to turn it big. That's the one thing that they need to kind of figure out. And yeah, if they can bowl again, they'll have to. First innings might be where they just have to, as Fidel said about Prabath Jayasuriya, they just need to be tight with probably in and out fields and buy their wickets, work hard for their wickets. And again, it's if they can, the challenge will be for them to uh, not not let Sri Lanka run away with the scoring in the first innings, which can kind of happen in Sri Lanka. Uh, the scoring rates tend to be higher than in India. So all those small little things they might need to adjust. And then once it's in the second innings is when like they will really come they will become real wicket taking threats.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, sorry.
No, I think I mean, in terms of spin in Sri Lanka, like the straight one is often, I very much agree with what Monga said earlier, that overspin is very lethal here because when second half of a match, like almost any Sri Lankan track will start to take some turn. And then the ones that go straight become extremely lethal. And Prabath Jayasuriya is quite good. I mean, when he's won matches for Sri Lanka, that's something that he does well, is that he bowls with the same action, same trajectory, and then there's a natural variation that happens on the Sri Lankan track. Some go on with the arm, others dip and spin away. And that becomes like the primary mode of wicket taking for spinners in a second innings. The first innings, as Monga said, is about like trying to contain the score, trying to keep that run rate under 4. Goal especially is one where you really, that first couple of days is really, really tough work for whichever team is bowling first. And Dhananjay De Silva as a captain has been reasonably good at setting those tight fields for his spinners, but he doesn't have a lot of options to call on. Like he doesn't have like he doesn't have like a banker in the way that Rangan. When you brought Rangan to the crease, you knew exactly what you were going to get. Prabath Jayasuriya is not there yet, anywhere near there yet. Asita Fernando can be used effectively in short spells. But if India have a strong first day of the series, I think that first day is going to dictate a lot of how competitive the series is going to be. If Sri Lanka can keep things keep a lid on India in the first couple of days, then suddenly they'll start to feel a lot more confident. I mean, this group of Sri Lankan players has also, apart from Chandimal, does not have a lot of history of having success against India. So there's also like a psychological aspect of whenever India come to town, like this is a much bigger show and much bigger series than they're used to playing at home. There is definitely now, because of all of the psychological baggage that Sri Lankan players bring into India matches, everything from Siraj bowling them out for, 6 for 13 at an Asia Cup final, all of these things add a sense of occasion and add a sense of like unknowing. We don't really know how a lot of these Sri Lankan players are going to react. One, because they're young, like people like Milan Ratnayaka just haven't played that much against India, and secondly because they we it's been so long since we've seen them like really tested at home in Test cricket. So there's a lot of, I think, a lot of how the Sri Lankan players will respond to the occasion is something that I'll be watching out for, and I think something that will dictate how far they'll get. They don't have a lot of senior heads there that have seen that have made a lot of headway against India. I mean, a lot of them would have played in that 2022 series in India, where Sri Lanka got absolutely smashed off the park in Mohali and in Bangalore. I don't think that a lot of Sri Lankan fans are expecting a lot of this series. But yeah, I guess the occasion will, yeah, it's the mental aspect of the game, I think, is a bit of an unknown from the Sri Lankan side.
Mongo, on the batting front for India, do you see any weaknesses against spin for India's batters? Is this going to be an important test for some of them in that way, or are you not too concerned about India's batting against spin in Test match cricket?
I am less concerned about India's batting than some of the other people who saw some of the kind of shots that were played against New Zealand when the ball was turning. People were not like really happy with, and people who kind of are in decision-making places were not quite happy with the kind of shots that were played when the ball was turning against New Zealand, and uh, they sensed a little bit of panic, lack of experience uh, in the way they were trying to just attack their way out of uh, a tricky situation where the bowlers are bowling well and they're not giving you easy runs. Uh, they saw a lack of the willingness to fight through a dry period. But I personally don't think there's that much of a trouble. This is just a modern batter's reaction to being challenged these days. They back themselves to kind of be able to score runs rather than fight through for a 2 hour period where they are not scoring many runs. They they trust their attacking game more than their defensive game, which is, I think, the case all around the world. Apart from that, I really don't feel there's any technical issue with Jaiswal, Rahul, Gill. Um, Padikkal is going to be a new guy. Jurel looks a very, very organized game. So Pant, we have seen Pant score runs all over the world. So I really don't see real technical issues. Maybe we will see them if they are in a position of strife. Maybe we will see them react differently now, uh, and not kind of try to hit their way out of it. But uh, I mean, if I were asked that, do you worry about India's batting on any overseas tour? I don't.
One of the players whose shots were under the scanner, KK, in that series against South Africa in particular, was Rishabh Pant. Pant, of course, had a very good series against England before he was unfortunately injured by that Yorker. But then, I mean, I know it's just two tests, but there was a lot of focus on Pant during the South Africa series, also because he ended up captaining for most of the series once Gill was injured. And his captaincy also was kind of questionable with some of his bowling changes, bowling a lot of Aksar Patel, who is, of course, now not part of the squad anymore. how big a series is this for Pant? Keeping in mind also he has lost his place as vice captain, which is something the selectors haven't even really fully explained. KL Rahul is now India's vice captain. Pant has been removed from that position. I don't know if we can answer why that happened, but what do you sense the selectors are thinking about Pant? I mean, they've got Jurel as another keeper now. Surely they're not thinking of leaving him out altogether, but there'll be a bit of pressure on him in this series, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is of course speculation, but I think probably that series against South Africa, when he was captain in the second test and was captain for most of the first test as well, probably that they took the call that maybe, we don't want to put this also on this guy's shoulders right now of decision making on the field in case Gill gets injured or something again. They would rather go to KL Rahul, who's done the job before. He's captained India in quite a few test matches now. He knows the ropes. I think even in England, which was Gill's first series as captain, you could kind of see him constantly like turning to Rahul to set help him set fields and things like that. So maybe it was a call based on that. I don't think from the selectors, like I can't see it. I can't see anybody thinking Pant's place is under pressure. He's like who's the best wicketkeeper batter in the world right now in Test cricket? I don't know. Like it's Pant. It has to be. Maybe Alex
I mean,
Carey
yeah.
comes into that conversation a
I'm
bit. But over
not just
an
now,
extended
over the
exactly.
last
Over a
five
period of
years.
5, 6 years, Pant has been remarkable. Like he's, all over the world, scoring hundreds, scoring 80s, 90s, and situations where that innings completely changed the game. Like if anybody is still has any questions about Rishabh Pant holding down his place as a just as a batter, and he's a damn good keeper as well. Even after coming back from his knee injury and everything, like a very serious, like surgeries everywhere and like all of that. He's looked fine. Like maybe not as good as he did before uh, as a keeper, but he's looked fine as a keeper as well. So like I don't think there's any. I can't see a world in which like Rishabh Pant is under pressure to hold his place in the Test team. And I don't know the guy, but like I don't think he's the kind of guy who's gonna sense it uh, when he plays, even if there is any theoretical kind of pressure on him. I do think sometimes that sometimes he plays certain shots and gets out, and it looks like sort of overconfidence. But I would argue that sometimes it's like there are times when he doesn't trust his own game, and you can kind of see that, like in Guwahati when he stepped out and to Jansen and tried to slog him. He had done something similar in Cape Town against Rabada once, and like there are certain shots that he plays that nobody else can, and when he plays them, that's fine. But sometimes there are these weird slogs that at strange times in his innings he plays. I think Monga and I looked it up that through that Australia tour and England tour, in the first over in which he was in the crease, the first 3, 4 balls, he'd step out to the fast bowler at least once, right? So I don't know where I'm going with this, but sometimes he does certain things and they don't come off and it looks really bad. But I think by now, hopefully, that even this no longer new team management has figured that out as well, that this is just his game. And, on his day, and those days do come fairly often, he's going to change games for you. So I don't think Pant is under any pressure in that sense. Jurel being there is just on the strength of his batting. And he's such an organized player, there's just this air of, I know what I'm doing about him. Uh, he also played very like a shot that came under a lot of criticism in Guwahati against Jansen again. And since then, he's not made a lot of runs. He's not had that much opportunity to play red ball cricket, but even in this tour game. So I think the big question, it's not a question as much as just where this Indian team is at right now. In that number three spot with Sai Sudarshan, who anyway isn't settled there, not being there, Padikkal taking it over, and uh, Jurel at number 6 or 7, depending on where Jadeja bats. I think just having two new guys and like still settling into the thing, sometimes you might come into a situation where a little bit of experience would be very helpful to just steer your team through, and they don't have that, and you can't do anything about it. So that's the only real issue with this batting lineup. I don't think there's any issue in terms of how good they are in terms of their technique or their ability against test quality bowling. It's just that slight lack of experience in those two positions, which can happen when a team is at this stage of a transition.
Yeah. There's one other India player who I think will be in focus in this series, but I'm going to pose this question to Fidel because the three of us have spoken enough about Kuldeep Yadav on this podcast. But this is a big series for Kuldeep because I mean I can't see a way he doesn't play both tests. And as Sid was saying, even Jadeja doesn't necessarily have the best record in Sri Lanka. So it's in some ways an opportunity for Kuldeep to be the standout spinner. Fidel, from your perspective, what do you make of Kuldeep, the red ball bowler? And also, like, if you can think about which wrist spinners have been successful in Sri Lanka, and how do you think Sri Lanka's batters will cope with a left arm wrist spinner who I imagine, even in Sri Lanka, they probably don't face that often?
Yeah. I mean, Sri Lanka had their own left arm wrist spinner in Lakshan Sandakan. So, there was a little period there where Kuldeep and Sandakan were kind of on even ground, and then obviously Kuldeep kind of shot off into the stratosphere, and Sandakan became it's not even really part of the emerging teams now. But wrist spinners haven't historically done that well in Sri Lanka. I think we've seen a lot of good wrist spinners come here, Warne being the only exception, and that's obviously an exception to all the exceptions. Wrist spinners generally don't tend to do that well. It's I think maybe it's partly the bounce. There's a little bit of extra bounce on Sri Lankan decks, so a lot of, especially early on in a match, a lot of their LBW shouts are going over the top. That tends to happen. Maybe not so much with Kuldeep. Kuldeep doesn't get like that level of bounce, but that is an issue that leg spinners and leg spinners mainly have faced in Sri Lanka. I think though a lot of there's enough now. There's enough exposure to left arm wrist spinners in this Sri Lankan batting order that they're not going to look at Kuldeep and find him baffling. They will. He's obviously got his deception and his variations, but I don't think Sri Lanka's batting order, which has people like Pathum Nissanka, has people like Kamidu Mendis, Dinesh Chandimal is kind of like the senior pro in that top order. Dhananjay De Silva has been around, has played Kuldeep many times before. They're not going to go into that feeling overawed by Kuldeep or anything that the Indian spinners are throwing at them. I think that will be a much more even contest. Indian spinners versus Sri Lankan batters will be an more even contest than Sri Lankan spinners versus Indian batters. So yeah, I think the one thing that Kuldeep might not be able to do in this series is bowl long tight spells. A lot of these Sri Lankan batters are good at attacking their way out of situations. That is something that they'll probably look to target, look to try and get Kuldeep off early on, and they will have the confidence of having done that to lots of leg spinners in the past. I think Jadeja perhaps will be in my view, they'll be a bit more worried about Jadeja than they will be about Kuldeep.
Okay, and in terms of Sri Lanka's batting, Fidel, is Nissanka fit firstly, and what's the team news like? Are they expecting to have their full strength batting lineup?
Nissanka, not sure yet. I think they're keeping that pretty close to their chest. But they do have good, they have Nishan Madushka and Lahiru Dara, who's just coming off a big 100 in the West Indies. So they do have cover for Nissanka. I think Nissanka certainly by the second test should be okay. But yeah, the batting coming to Mendis, I'm kind of looking at him to have a big series himself. He hasn't, since he was that player who would score 100 in virtually every test, there's been a little bit of a falling to earth since then. His average is still around about 60, but that is propped up by his extraordinary numbers in over a period of about 12 months. But I think this is another one of those Sri Lankan players that if he has a good series here, that will set him up beautifully for the next few years. An India series is really where you can like put your name up and show the selectors that you're someone worth investing in. Kamindu Mendes has done that to a great extent, but he's now on the cusp of needing to take that next level, a next step in his career and become the consistent kind of run machine that we've seen from players like, say, Kumar Sangakkara in the past, where no matter who comes to play, he's making runs. So I think Kamindu Mendes is a big player in this series, and especially because what the thing that he might struggle with is that Kuldeep turns the ball away from him. He hasn't always been good at playing that kind of bowling, but against seamers, he's very, very comfortable. And I don't think he will probably look at that Jadeja battle and think that's one that he can win. So I think Sri Lanka's batting is in half decent shape. Again, the same problems of not having played enough Test cricket, not having had a lot of like red ball, batting for hours on end kind of practice over the last couple of years. That's going to be an issue for them. But it's definitely in a much better place than the attack is, I feel.
Okay, Monga, given that it was your idea to do a preview of the series and you've now been the quietest of all the guests, what other themes are you looking forward to in this series? Or are there any other players who you think will be kind of in focus?
I mean, yeah, Kuldeep Yadav, because I think just for our sake, I hope he does well because we have built him up so much. And in the last Test series that he played at home, he extracted less turn than the finger spinners in that series. So that is something I will be watching out for. I would be watching out for any changes, any technical changes he might have had over the period. Other than that, Shubman Gill, I'll be because it's going to be extremely humid in Sri Lanka, and if he plays a long innings, I just hope that he doesn't cramp again. The fitness of India's bowlers will be under the scanner. Other than that, yeah, really, really exciting series to look forward to, especially if Sri Lanka win the toss in the first test. I think we are looking at a really tight series. What else? Maybe Siraj kind of tends to do well when there is nothing happening, if there are long spells to be bowled. So
Yeah.
that's all.
Yeah, I have one player like I think who's going to be very influential. I think he will play the first test now that like Washington Sundar is injured. Like Manav Sutar, he made an excellent debut against Afghanistan. And the thing is, like we've been talking about Sri Lankan pitches being a little different from Indian pitches in terms of how they help spin and how overspin becomes so much more of a factor. You tend to get. I remember in the 2015 series, like it was a very different series for Ashwin compared to a lot of his India series, where he's getting a lot of wickets caught in the slips, caught at short leg, because of the bounce of those pitches. And rather than the bold and LBW kind of line of attack that you typically expect from Ashwin and Jadeja in Indian conditions, right? Uh, and Manav Sutar is that kind of bowler who, bowls with a lot of overspin, gets it to dip, actually, turns the ball quite a lot for a finger spinner, gets it to hit, the sticker of the bat when, people are defending him. I think he's going to be a very, very key player for India in this series, and I think he's going to bowl a lot of overs, probably more than any other India spinner if he keeps this. Even in, I watched this tour game in bits and parts, mostly day one, and I thought he really like after a slightly slow start, like everybody else, all the players looked a little rusty, and so did he. Once he got into his groove, he looked really, really good. His pace variations, the way he was getting the ball to drift. So if he keeps that rhythm going, I think I'm fairly sure he's going to play as one of three spinners. If it's a typical ball pitch and India go with two seamers and three spinners, so then if that's the case, he will play, and I think he'll bowl a lot of overs and he'll have a major role to play.
Yeah, this is Sutar is one of the more anticipated debuts for India. Wherever you've seen him bowl, he's impressed everyone. Uh, he's I think since Siraj made his debut, I think it was in 2020. So in the last 6 years, we haven't had a bowler with so much expectation coming into Test cricket from India. And yeah, as you pointed out, he's really kind of traditional overspin kind of bowler, who has who you just see his bowling style, and you see he loves bowling long spells. He loves, he's in there for the not just the wickets, the slight he take the bat higher than expected, slight beating in the flight, all those things. Yeah, he's going to be again. Uh, and the good thing is that okay, it's a really mean thing to say, but the good thing is that
He can
Washington
bat.
Sundar is Washington Sundar is not
Oh yeah,
there.
yeah.
Because the Indian team management does kind of feel tempted to have extra batting, so that is not going to be an issue.
And he can bat as well. So
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
mean he does have that notional idea of
yeah.
which gives them that comfort.
Sri Lanka don't anyway have too many lefties, right, Fidel? So in any case, an off spinner, I don't know whether India would have been tempted to pick. Saran Shen is there in the squad, but it's pretty certain they'll pick Sutar over Saran Shen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. So there's, I mean, Kamindu Mendis and Sonal Dinusha, who's also a left arm spinner, will likely start. So yeah, not too many left. Yeah, no, I don't think that off spin, yeah, is that tempting an option against this Sri Lanka batting order. I think left arm spin is definitely a more bankable strategy.
And also, what's happened to Tarundu Ratnanayake after his debut, where he was, I think, the first bowler to take wickets with both arms in a test debut?
Yeah, I mean, he's around the system. Whether he will play in this series, it's not clear yet. He's I think like slightly now made the switch to being more of a limited overs bowler. I think that's where he's going to maybe impose himself, because he's the opportunities in especially T20 cricket for an ambidextrous bowler are much higher than in tests. Let's see. I mean, he's not been in excellent form as well. Like I, looking through his recent bowling efforts, like there hasn't been a lot from him. So I don't know if Sri Lanka are looking to him as being a major bowler in this series. But we'll I also, the thing with ambidextrous bowlers is that sometimes even they themselves, I mean, we saw that with Kamindu Mendis as well, they themselves struggle with settling on a strategy and settling into a rhythm. There have been issues like that with Ratnayaka as well. He had a great series against Afghanistan, I think it was. But we haven't seen a lot from him since then.
Monga already started the podcast with his prediction, so I'll ask KK and Fidel now for their official predictions for the series. If you can be as specific as Monga.
Let Fidel go first.
Oh God. Look, I think I am struggling to see beyond an India 2-0, just because it's been so long. It's been so long since Sri Lanka have been really good in tests against India, I watched all of, the last 5 tests between these two nations have all been pretty one-sided. I was with Monga and I covered that 2017-2018 series. Then I was covering that 2022 series in Mohali and Bangalore. It's just been so long. I think it's going to take like a Chandimal-esque innings, Chandimal 2015 goal, that 153 that he played, is going to take an innings like that, or 162, I think it was. Is going to take an innings of that. It's going to take a performance of that kind of that quality and or of that impact to bring Sri Lanka level and make Sri Lanka really competitive against India. It's just, there are so many systemic things that are stacked against Sri Lanka at the moment. And also, there's they don't have a bankable attack. And that's really what, when you're trying to win matches at home against high quality opposition, that is the first thing that you need as part of your team, is that you need your attack to be solid. And I think there's a lot of hope that this attack can one day get there, but it's not the finished product there yet. And for that reason, I would say likeliest result, I hate to see it, but a 2-0 India victory is, if I'm being like super rational about it, that's what my head's saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if Sri Lanka had come into this with, say, a year where they played 7 test matches and they had some idea of, this is our combination, these are our players, this is, what you can roughly expect from us. I'd be like, I have certain misgivings about this Indian team right now, especially traveling to Sri Lanka has never been easy. I think the previous era, that the quality of that team was so good that they made it look deceptively, like something you could go there and win a series. And they might have won 3-0 even in 2015 if not for that Chandimal knock, right? So, I mean, this team isn't that team. And so like I said, with the seam bowling, with sometimes like the selection calls that this team management can make, their luck with tosses and things, sometimes injuries, all of that, kind of combined to create this aura of fallibility. But yeah, like looking at where the Sri Lankan team is, how little Test cricket they've played. Yeah, I want to say 1-1, but I'm going 2-0 India.
Okay, so we have 2-2-0 India's, but Sid is saying 1-1 India Sri Lanka. I will also say 2-0 India. And I think that this might be similar to the 2015 series in that it could be a bit of a turning point for India in Test cricket. 2015, by the way, I was looking through it, in India's previous 12 or 14 tests before that, they had won just one test because they had been to South Africa, New Zealand, England, Australia. So they had had a really rough time of it. And then it was after winning that series that Virat Kohli's captaincy kind of turned into this very successful test captaincy. And that was a really big series. So this series has kind of that 2015 feel about it. And so, yeah, I think India with their batting, it's just a little bit stronger than Sri Lanka's. And even though Bumrah's not there, I can see India's seamers also having some role to play, in particular Siraj. So, yeah, okay, we've got 3 2-0s to India, and I'm sure now it'll be 2-0 to Sri Lanka at the end of it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would love to see, I would love to see like, I mean, it's the kind of series like when India come to town, it's the kind of series where players know that if they perform well against India, their career just turns around, and because so many more eyeballs are on them, and I think individually the Sri Lankan players will be extremely motivated to go out and do something special. If that happens from a bowler, say Asitha Fernando has a great series, or the two main ones I'm thinking of is Asitha Fernando and Prabath Jayasuriya. If either of those players have a great series, then Sri Lanka are in the game, But it's a big if. It's a big if to come good against this India batting order after having played so little Test cricket. I mean, Asitha Fernando has a huge heart. If there's someone who's going to do it, it'll be him. But they, on paper, with so little to go on in terms of like form for playing in Sri Lanka, it's just hard to see. You look down that list of 11s, and there's definitely much more quality on one side than the other.
It's just that home advantage and the experience of bowling in these conditions, and how quickly India adjusts. But what I would like to see is that if Sri Lanka do manage to put one beyond India in goal, what I would like to see is like a proper snooze fest. 700 plays 800 at
And the
SSC.
and they go to SSC, can be like one of those old SSC matches,
Yeah.
where where like the first
Yeah.
innings isn't
Like
done
we can
until like midway
we
through the
can
fifth
bring back
morning.
Mahela at whatever age he is, 50, whatever, and he'll score a double hundred.
I'm sure
Okay.
Ministry of
Uh,
Crab can run without them for a week. Both of them can come.
Okay. On that note, does anybody have a pet peeve for this week? I can go if none of you have thought of one. Okay. So
Go for it.
my pet peeve is to do with cricket commentary, and God knows there's a lot of things wrong with cricket commentary these days. But the thing that really annoys me is when batters hit a shot up in the air and the commentators just yell something ambiguous like "That's in the air" or "Where's that gone?" Because the thing is that once you've watched cricket a while, you in a sense don't really need the commentary. You can see what's happening. But the one time that you do kind of need the commentators is when the ball goes out of the frame, right? So if a batter hits, I mean, most often, even then, you can tell if a ball's going for six or not. But if a batter sort of miscued it but still hit it hard enough, that's the one time that you want the commentators who are at the ground. And, most commentators are at the ground to just look out of the press box and say, is this touch and go on the boundary? Is this easily carrying into the stands? Is this going to be caught at long off? But invariably, what you hear is just something utterly ambiguous. Like, where's that gone? It's in the air. And then you just have to wait till the camera crew catch up and see whether the ball is actually going to be caught or go into the stands. There are times when you'll hear this and then the ball will land 3 rows back in the stands, and you're wondering why the commentators couldn't tell that by just looking out of the window. And in a sense, I mean, I kind of think that they have themselves to blame that now a lot of cricket commentary is actually just being done from the studio. Because if you're not going to actually look at the game, then you might as well do it off the TV. So that's my pet peeve. I can see everyone being very quiet and not having anything to say about this,
I mean,
saving themselves.
in the commentator's defense, sometimes it is genuinely hard to tell. It takes a couple of seconds before it becomes clear whether this ball is clearing the boundary or not. Some shots that are obviously sixes or obviously going to be caught, it's different. But it's not always easy to judge that trajectory before. Yeah, I do see your point though. I mean, they're there to a lot of the time. I think there was that very great Richie Beno attitude towards commentating is if you can't add to what's being seen on the screen, then you may as well stay quiet. I do think that I agree that a few more commentators could live by that maxim a little bit more tightly.
Okay. Does anyone have a retro player that they'd like to talk about?
Oh, by the way, I have a pet peeve.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, go
Uh,
ahead.
to watch from the Sri Lankan side of things. This has been happening in Sri Lankan international cricket for a while. The celeb appealing, like the instead of appealing, for LBW especially, they just run towards the keeper. Asita Fernando is a bad one in this team. Love him as a bowler, but like that's something that just grinds against like you turn around and face the umpire when you're appealing. That's just a basic level of respect. Someone's there to make a decision. I hope we see less of that, but Wanindu Hasaranga like started it off in the Sri Lankan circles, but it's spread like wildfire, and there's many Sri Lankan bowlers now who do that, and I think they end up losing decisions because umpires obviously don't like it. Why are you annoying the person who could possibly give you a wicket? There are a lot of umpires calls, DRS reviews that if Sri Lanka's bowlers had been a little bit more respectful towards the umpires might be a little bit more likely to give them those decisions, and then even if it goes to DRS, they end up on the right side. That's something that's been annoying me about Sri Lankan cricket for a while. I hope that we see the end of that.
Listen, like Siraj and Jadeja are going to be there, and they can outdo anyone for like celeb appealing in the world. So you're not going to not see it during this series, I feel, unless they have terrible series and they don't hit a single pad.
I don't know what is in it for the bowlers though. I don't understand like what are you gaining from not turning around? Like what is the like what is
Well,
It's
the
aura, Fidel.
benefit?
Aura.
you are also
He's
impressing
just
upon the
excited.
umpire. You're also impressing upon the umpire that this is plum. Right? How can you not give this?
And you're also
But
proving to your captain how good you are judging LBW so that they then review every time you want to review. There's a piece on Cricinfo, by the way, by Charles Reynolds. It's an incredible piece on Stuart Broad's celeb repealing. Stuart Broad was one of the original celeb repealers,
Yeah,
and
OG.
he does a statistical analysis of how often Broad was right in his celeb appeals, and he's also broken it down into at what point of the appeal Broad turns or Broad doesn't turn towards the umpires. And he found that usually when Broad starts celebrating immediately, it's out 100% of the time.
I'm
oh,
sure he
okay.
made it up.
Yeah, but then don't you look incredibly stupid when you've like celeb repealed for something that's obviously not out? You know, that's also happened. That also happens.
Yeah, but
I don't know.
I think
I can't. I just there's like I'm not a purist in many ways, but this one it really annoys the crap out
there's
of me.
a Gen Z or Gen Alpha term, I don't know what it is, called aura farming or something
Oh
these days.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you have, I mean, like how silly would Jofra Archer have looked, or how silly would he have made Chris Jordan look if Chris Jordan had dropped the catch the other day? I don't know if you've seen this clip, but in the 100, Archer got, I mean, somebody top edged the ball off him and it was going towards Chris Jordan. So Archer just didn't look at the catch. He just started appealing, even though it was actually a fairly hard catch. And in the end, of course, Jordan took the catch. So it looked really cool. Like, oh, Archer's so confident that, it's Chris Jordan under the ball and he's going to take the catch. But if he had dropped it, then he would have made his teammate look pretty bad. And Hardik does this no look appealing as well. No look celebrating, right? What does Hardik do? He kind of also just doesn't look at the catch or whatever, just keeps looking at the batter after he stop edge
Yeah.
the ball. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's
I
all
think
about
I think the batter's reaction will give away whether the catch has been taken or not. So might as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we've had
I think the batting version of this is the no look shot now, like where you just look at where your point of contact with the ball was, and you don't look at
yeah.
where the ball has gone. But that I've never seen that one go wrong. Martin Guptill used to do it, and
I
then someone
have I
recently
have
did.
seen
Yeah.
I have seen some no look boundary catches where
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I think Brevis has been
yeah,
out on a
Oh
no
yeah,
look.
Brevis did that. Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Washington Sundar, by the way, also very good player of the no look six. Okay, we've had two pet peeves today, so we can skip the retro player. Uh, so thank you everybody for listening to Rock and Roll It. I'll do the outro now. I have a very elaborate outro this week, so I'm now planning. I'm rethinking it as I'm as I'm going to say it. But what I will say is to everybody, until we see you again, everybody just enjoy the human life cycle and learn lessons from cricket at every point of it. If you're a young teenager and you find that pressure starting to build on you and you're no longer actually enjoying the things you're passionate about, look at Vaibhav Suryavanshi. He's playing on the world stage, but yet he still plays cricket as if he's going to an ice cream shop. If you're a young person and you're filled with rage, just remember that at one point Virat Kohli was the same, and now he's found peace in his life. If you're a middle-aged person and you find that you don't have many friends anymore, things are getting a bit boring, just look at cricketers and realize that you can always start a podcast. And if you're nearing death, just remember that if you're a true cricket fanatic, the kind of person that's listening to this podcast, even on your dying day, you'll probably be daydreaming about cricket. And in your head, even as you feel all human instinct leave your body, you will probably still feel the impulse to, in your daydream, take a quick single. But just don't do it. It's not worth it. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Let's go.